The first thing I remember isn't a birthday or a holiday. It's the smell of my parents' tiny convenience shop. A mix of fried dough, floor cleaner, and the dusty scent of cardboard boxes. I practically grew up between narrow aisles stacked with cheap snacks and shelves of mismatched products. My father bought from whichever supplier offered the lowest price that week, while other children spent their afternoons at parks or dance classes. Mine were spent watching customers shuffle in and out, while my mother rang up small purchases. By the time I could reach the counter without a stool, I was helping. Maya, sweetheart, hand me the receipt tape. My mother would call, and I'd scurry across the back room like a little mouse. My brother, Ethan, rarely appeared in the store unless he wanted snacks or pocket money. He was 3 years older, but maturity-wise, the gap felt reversed. He always managed to slip away to a friend's house, a soccer game, a sleepover anywhere that wasn't our cramped shop with its flickering fluorescent lights. My parents brushed off his absence with easy excuses. Boys just need space. He'll come around when he's older. Let him have fun while he can. What they didn't realize was that I was giving up my own childhood in the spaces he avoided. I watched my parents struggle, patching together bills, negotiating with suppliers they could barely understand over the phone, and working 12-hour shifts without complaint. Something inside me hardened into determination. I didn't want them to spend the rest of their lives trapped behind that counter. I didn't want my future to be defined by that small shop either. But unlike Ethan, I never wanted to run away from it. I wanted to make it better. At 16, I convinced my parents to let me rearrange the entire store. My father frowned at the idea, muttering that customers were used to the layout, but he eventually gave in mostly because I'd already drawn a full plan on a roll of receipt paper. I moved the hidey, manned items to the back, grouped related products together, added hand, painted signs, and cleaned every dusty corner until the place nearly sparkled. Sales rose 18% in the first month. My father stared at the numbers like they were magic. My mother kissed my forehead, whispering, "You think like a businesswoman already." Ethan didn't say anything, but then again, he hadn't even noticed the store had changed until 2 weeks later. When I was 19, I enrolled in free online business and marketing courses. I studied after closing, my laptop perched on boxes of canned goods while my fingers grew stiff from the cold. But I soaked up everything: branding, e-commerce, logistics, customer psychology. Every new concept gave me another idea for the shop. Some failed, most succeeded, and slowly our single store began looking less like a local convenience shop and more like the early shell of something larger. By 22, after dreaming quietly for years, I gathered the courage to pitch a wild vision to my parents. Let's expand. Let's turn this into a brand. They didn't laugh outright, but the hesitation in their eyes was unmistakable. "Maya, we don't have money for that. It's too risky, maybe later." But I had already decided. If they couldn't imagine a bigger future, I would imagine it for all of us. And so the foundation of everything, the growth, the success, the future began not with applause or belief, but with a daughter determined to lift the weight her family never realized she carried. Success didn't arrive in a single moment. It built itself quietly like a rising tide. One store became 4, then 12, then 20. 3. I was 28 when the journalists started calling me the visionary daughter behind the fastest growing regional brand. Every time my parents saw my name in an article, they'd beam proudly and show it to their friends. My mother taped them to the refrigerator until the door was more newspaper than appliance. Ethan reappeared around that time, first at family dinners, then at store meetings, and eventually lurking around expansion discussions like he had been part of the journey since day one. He wasn't malicious, he simply believed the world would always find a place for him, and honestly, my parents encouraged that belief. Your brother should learn the business, my father said one evening. I paused mid-sip of tea. Since when? He's showing interest now, my mother chimed in. Interest? That was a generous interpretation of Ethan scrolling on his phone while I explained supply chain adjustments. Still, I convinced myself to welcome him. Family meant loyalty, and loyalty meant forgiving what people didn't do in the past. When the National Investor Group contacted us, a sleek, sharp group with perfectly tailored suits and a taste for high-growth brands, I was the one who prepared the pitch deck. Weeks of sleepless nights, financial forecasting, branding revisions, and strategy shaping collapsed into a 90-minute presentation. I never felt so breathless in my life, and they loved it. They loved me. One of the executives shook my hand firmly and said, "You're the engine of this company. The $8 million we're offering is an investment in your mind just as much as the business. $8 million." My parents nearly fainted when they heard the number. For a while, it felt like I was living inside a dream. We celebrated at our favorite family restaurant. My father lifted a glass and said to Maya, the daughter who changed our future. Ethan clinked his glass lazily, not quite meeting my eyes. He didn't congratulate me, but I told myself he just felt overshadowed. I didn't want to believe anything darker. As the national expansion plans moved forward, the question of leadership became more pressing. Investors hinted at corporate structure, governance, and a central CEO. Every conversation seemed to orbit around the same assumption, that I would lead. I had built the systems, negotiated contracts, formed partnerships, and understood every operational gear of the company. One night, our lead investor visited our home for dinner. She turned to my parents and said casually, "You must be proud. Your daughter's ready to run a national corporation." My mother smiled politely but hesitated. "She's very talented," she said. My father added, "But Ethan is the eldest." The investor blinked, surprised. I felt the words lodge in my throat like sharp stones. After the investor left, I confronted them. "Eldest, what does that have to do with anything?" "It's tradition," my father said almost gently. "When a business grows, the son takes leadership." "But I built this," I whispered, "and you'll continue to help." My mother replied as if that softened it. That night, long after they went to bed, I sat alone in the darkened living room, staring at the framed newspaper articles on the wall. Articles celebrating a daughter they were now preparing to push into the shadows of her brother. I told myself I was overreacting, that they were confused, overwhelmed, or clinging to old-fashioned ideas they would soon outgrow. But deep down, in the quietest part of myself, I felt something cold settle in. A warning, a shift. The success that should have been mine was slowly being rewritten as his. The morning of the board meeting felt like the beginning of a victory I had earned with every sleepless night, every risk. Every decision I had made since I was 16. My presentation, my vision was ready on my laptop. I had rehearsed it a dozen times, refining every number and phrasing until it felt bulletproof. The expansion plan was my masterpiece, and I was ready to take the role that seemed like the natural next step, CEO. The conference room we had rented was modern and bright, with a wall of glass overlooking the city. Investors, lawyers, potential board members, and a few senior employees took their seats. They greeted me with warm smiles and firm handshakes. I could feel their expectation, this is her moment. Then Ethan walked in. He wore a navy suit that didn't quite fit, the sleeve tag still dangling like an afterthought. He looked both smug and anxious, a strange combination that made my stomach tighten. My parents flanked him as if he were a king they were escorting to his coronation. "Maya, you good?" he asked casually, straightening his tie. "Yeah," I said, confused. "Are you presenting something today?" He grinned. "You'll see." My pulse quickened. Something was wrong. When everyone settled, my father stood at the front of the room. He cleared his throat, his expression a blend of excitement and solemnity. "Thank you all for being here as we begin a new chapter for our company," he began. "We are proud to announce our official leadership structure as we expand nationally." I opened my laptop slowly, waiting for my name. With great pride, my father continued, "We appoint our son, Ethan, as Chief Executive Officer." The words struck like a slap. For a full second, I couldn't breathe. The room didn't spin, it froze. Investors exchanged startled glances. One of them even turned toward me, confusion etched on her face. My mother stepped forward, placing a supportive hand on Ethan's back. "He is the eldest," she explained smoothly. "Tradition matters, and he has shown great enthusiasm to lead." Enthusiasm. He had shown up to meetings like a tourist visiting a museum, and Maya, my father added quickly, "will serve in an advisory role. She's extremely talented, but she gets emotionally attached to certain decisions. A CEO must remain objective, emotionally attached." To the business I built from a shop that couldn't afford new light bulbs, I felt something inside me collapse, quietly, without ceremony. Ethan stepped up to the front, beaming, "I'll take it from here," he said confidently, as if this moment had been earned, as if he'd spent a single day sweating in the trenches I had lived in for years. I didn't stay for the rest of the meeting. I didn't make a scene. I closed my laptop, stood up, and walked out. A couple of investors called after me, but their voices felt distant, muffled under the weight of betrayal. Outside, the cold air hit my face, sharp and almost metallic. Only then did the tears come, not loud or dramatic, but silent, angry, humiliating. I leaned against the building, clutching my laptop like a lifeline. I had given them everything. I had believed family loyalty was unbreakable, that love guaranteed fairness. I was wrong. In the weeks that followed, Ethan began making decisions, poor ones. He dismissed the data I had spent years refining, cut experienced staff members to replace them with his unqualified friends, launched rebranding campaigns that confused loyal customers, and signed deals without understanding the margins. Every mistake felt like salt rubbed into the wound my parents had created. I kept my distance, watching the company wobble under his weight. And for the first time in my life, I wondered if the dream I built had never truly belonged to me. Not in their eyes, not in their hearts, and maybe not anymore at all. I didn't cry the day I walked away from the company. Not really. The tears had come during that cold, humiliating board meeting. After that, walking away became my armor, my quiet declaration that no one, not even family, could take my dignity or my vision. I started small, almost invisibly. A rented office downtown, a handful of loyal employees, and a brand, new idea. A business built not on inheritance or tradition, but on ethics, innovation, and transparency. I poured everything I had learned into this new company. Every lesson from the old business, every triumph and mistake, was a building block for something stronger. Investors didn't hesitate to follow me. They had seen me in action. They trusted the results I had already delivered. Staff from my former company quietly reached out, asking if I had room for them. Customers, loyal and observant, began comparing services, products, and ethics, and slowly, they started coming over. Ethan's mismanagement accelerated my ascent. He ignored data, overpaid for flashy campaigns, and alienated the experienced team I had nurtured. The same investors who once called me the engine of the family company now whispered about him, "He doesn't understand the basics. She could save this, but will she?" The answer was simple. No, I didn't need to. I was busy building something better, something sustainable, something mine. Within 18 months, my brand became a household name, expanding faster than anyone had imagined. National recognition, multiple awards, media coverage, it all came to me because I had earned it, brick by brick, decision by decision. Meanwhile, my family's company began hemorrhaging clients and credibility. Articles quietly appeared about its declining sales, poor management, and mounting debt. Then came the moment that could have been cruel if I wanted it to be. My parents called together. My father's voice trembled. My mother's words were thick with shame. We need your help," they said almost in unison. "The company is failing. Ethan, he doesn't know what he's doing. You're the only one who can fix it." I listened politely. I even smiled just slightly. "You made your choice," I said softly, letting the weight of those words sink in. "Now you live with it." Later, I learned the company was being liquidated. I attended the auction, not out of desperation, but curiosity. And when the opportunity arose, I bought it. Not to save it, not to resurrect it, not to forgive or prove kindness, but simply to reclaim what had always belonged to me. The fruit of my labor, my vision, my legacy. I kept the original corner store intact, a small museum of my beginnings, but everything else was my decision. I offered generous severances to loyal staff, shut down toxic branches, and restructured what remained under my own terms. My family watched from the sidelines, powerless, while the company they had once championed under Ethan's guidance crumbled entirely. I never gloatingly called them. I didn't parade my success in front of them. Their defeat wasn't about humiliation. It was about justice, about proof that hard work, vision, and integrity matter more than birth order or blind favoritism. And as I stood in the newly renovated headquarters of my brand, watching my team work with passion and dedication, I realized that the sweetest revenge isn't ruin. It's triumph, it's peace. It's walking away from betrayal with your head held high, knowing you never needed approval to succeed. And for the first time in years, I felt free. I didn't need them to acknowledge me. I didn't need their praise. The world already had, and that finally was more than enough.